Om Vedanta Siddhanta Niruktiresha Brahmaiva Jivaham Sakalam Jagatcha Akanda Rupa Stiti Areva Moksho Brahmadvitiye Shutayaha Pramanam. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. It is the apt and final conclusion of the Vedanta that all is Brahman. Time, space, living beings, and the world. Living in constant recognition of this fact is what is called enlightenment. Brahman is pure and perfect, and one without a second. And the revealed scriptures are the sure and certain proof of this fact. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Brahmanandam Paramasukharam Kevalam Gyanamurtim Dvandvaititam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamashadi Laksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Vavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tan Namami. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kamam Tamatmastam Ye Nupashanti Diraha Tesham Shanti Sasvati Netaresham. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. We offer our eternal obeisances to the Supreme Being, through whose grace our ignorance is dispelled, who is beyond good and bad, pleasure and pain, life and death, and all phases of opposites. We recognize that one who is the only witness to the changing phenomena of this universe. May we through that grace go beyond darkness and delusion and realize the truth in this very life. That one, the eternal among non-eternal things, the intelligence of the most intelligent ones, who, though ever one, nevertheless fulfills the desires of the many. That one, the wise realize, is dwelling in their very self. To them belong peace and to none else. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu, Ma Vidveshavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the teachings, or with the world. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Namaste, everyone. Welcome to SRV Hawaii, here on the Big Island. And we meet for our third in a series of classes on Advaita Vedanta. Call it Advaita Yoga, or call it, as you will, what Gaudapada named it in his time, which is called the non-touch yoga, or Asparsha Yoga. And we have been looking into that particular subtle, non-dual state of mind or of no mind, if you'd rather put it that way, for some 6 hours now, and we're about ready to launch into 3 more. And we will have further classes over the next 2 Sundays, live streamed. Today we've just returned from our talk at the New Thought Church on the Kona side of this island, where we presented the message called Avatar as Exemplar, not Savior. So we were looking into the great sayings of the avatars, as we have done here on live streaming class before, called the Advaita of the Avatars, and a series of classes that's now available on our website. And we welcome all those who are joining us on live streaming. We feel very fortunate and have gratitude to Advaita Academy for allowing us to have this space and use this time wisely. That is Nama, Rupa, Desha, Kala, and Namitta. Name, form, causality, time, and space. They're all considered to be false superimpositions over reality and concepts in our mind. But nevertheless, we can use them in a positive way. So that's what I mean. We're using this space, this time, in a positive way in order to transmit the teachings of Advaita Vedanta to those who are interested in joining us live, those who are here in the room at the ashram here in Honaka'a, and also those of a general interest, like those we spoke today at the New Thought Church. And we return here to the ashram to look into the non-touch yoga where we left off last time. And as you remember, that was with this particular chart. And I have actually looked up the actual slokas in Gaudapada's Karika that have to do with this chart. You remember, as a basic rundown of this chart, we left it last time, I've titled it The Province of the Enlightened. And it subtitled The 3 Types of Knowledge Samadhis in Advaita Vedanta. We know in yoga there's 2, as I think I mentioned last week. There's the Savitarka, Savichara, and Nirvitarka, Nirvichara couples of knowledge samadhis. Basically, they have to do with having your first glimpse of all that is within you. That is this whole host of knowledge that has turned into objects out here, but on the inside is still in a non-objective way, is much like these first two yogas of the non-dual Advaita here. You can see where it says there, the first Laukika Gyan is knowledge when external objects are believed to exist. So here we are in the realm of external objects, and we're looking at trees, and we're looking at sugar cane. You know, we're in Hawaii if we say that. And we're looking at the ocean outside our window, out of our view of this ashram. And we're looking at books on the shelf that have to do with spiritual topics. We're looking at all sorts of different objects. So we're here where those things exist, in relativity, in duality, however you want to put it. But that also is a kind of samadhi if one sees it that way. That is, if one knows that all of those objects aforementioned and all the other objects that we take in, as well as our very own physical bodies, are made of intelligence, intelligent particles as we'd say, then that's a kind of samadhi that you're walking around in all the time. And of course you refer to the seers and the scriptures to underlie, support, and further deepen the knowledge that you're in. It's a kind of a knowledge samadhi. He calls it Laukika Gyan, as you see by the chart that you're seeing now on the camera, and also Shuddha Laukika Gyan. It becomes Shuddha, pure, when you see that those very same objects outside of you have come from inside of you. That is, as Swami Vivekananda once said, you can destroy the clay cup, but you can never destroy the thought, clay cup. I had someone write me recently a good question about how he can trace his negative thoughts in his mind and trace them back to their origin and destroy it. And I told him, neither thought nor origin can be destroyed. Let me give you the non-dual version of the answer first. Nothing is destroyed. Everything is existing at all times. It's just a matter of whether it manifests itself or it's in an unmanifested state. And that's basically what Gaudapada is talking about here. When you see with your senses outwardly all of these things existing, yet you know that those things have a connection to your inner self, that is through the mind and through the word, then you can call yourself to be in that first samadhi, laukika gyan. It's a kind of knowledge samadhi you're walking around in. The only way that you could probably understand that is to compare it with your friend or your neighbor who are not in that kind of mindset. They don't know yet or have any inkling or any idea that the tree is just a projection of their own thought. They're thinking of the tree as something that nature produced, or they're thinking of the tree as something that exists independently of Brahman, independently of you, and independent of the mind. And so that's all called separation. See, there's a whole host of separations there which a person has to deal with if one is interested in, well, let's just say the word, it's rather cliche, oneness. Because basically Advaita means oneness. It can be used in a cliche way if you don't understand the inner dynamics of what connects you to that thing. You can just say, oh, I'm one with everything, and I'm stardust, and all the lyrics out of the early songs in the 60s that we were raised on here in the West, but basically you haven't ascertained the inner dynamics of the thing, what makes it one with you. And actually, if you take it to deeper levels of samadhi, like he says here on this chart, which is called Lokatara Gyan, where neither the object nor its perception exists, it just becomes completely melded, merged in you, back in your own true nature. And there are no objects anymore. There's just the subject, the eternal subject. Then you're finding this different and higher kind of samadhi, which was also used by Patanjali in his Raja Yoga, in that yoga system called Ashtanga, or eight-limbed. That's a very high samadhi called unseeded. That is, it has no seeds in it. Seeds that will produce thoughts, seeds that will produce energy, seeds that will produce objects. The seeds have been burnt. So now you're in a state where there is no object, there is no energy, and there is no thought. Beyond mind, energy, and thought, and matter, is this Atman. It is anterior to life and mind. That's how the Mundaka Upanishad says it. So here's Mandukya Upanishad, and there's a quote from Mundaka Upanishad. Don't get the two confused because it's easy to do. So this is a little bit of a rerun of this chart because a few of my students actually said that went by too fast last week. I'd like to look at that again. So it actually, I'm putting it pretty simply here, and then I'm also trying to make it a sort of hands-on teaching so that you know that when you're aware of outer objects, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are dual. You see, you're just aware of duality. Your perception is aware of duality. And the object seems separate from you, but if you keep the knowledge that you have gleaned from the teachings, from the Dharma, and from your meditations, and from your teachers, then you'll always keep that connection in mind so that you walking out of the house one day, as compared to your neighbor walking out of your house one day, are two different completely different beings. You see what I'm saying? One is walking out just saying, all of that is separate from me, and I have to somehow go out and go into it. How does he put it here? All entities are by nature calm and unoriginated from the very outset. They're of the nature of nirvana itself. But there is indeed no self-confidence in those who move about believing in an illusory world of differences. That's your so-called neighbor walking out without having this knowledge that he's connected into all of this. Those who hold to this doctrine of separation descend into a world fraught with differences. They are traditionally known as nervous wrecks. Probably the first time the phrase was ever used, back there in 500, 600 AD, you see, when Gaudapada was living. So I hope then we understand the first samadhi. First knowledge samadhi is kind of an objective samadhi. The objects are there, you're perceiving them, but don't let that cause you to think that you've forgotten the connection between the object and yourself. So there's a certain peace and there's a certain bliss in that, isn't there? If you think everything is separate from you and everything is different, then you enter a world that's fraught with fear. Does it sound familiar? Because that's what people are living in. that kind of fear of separation. They fear each other, they fear nature, they fear other countries. That kind of fear grows, you see, and it turns into violent actions, turns into all sorts of transgressions against the Dharma. Even against moral codes and ethicals, what to speak of the Dharma. So there is a certain bliss, a certain peace involved with knowing that all of that's come from you. We can put it that simply, okay? That is Laukika Gyan. This is the first samadhi of knowledge in the Advaita Vedanta system. Now, that second one we mentioned is Shuddha Laukika Gyan. Shuddha means pure. There is what is pure, there is what is mixed, and there is what is impure. That's called Shuddha, Shuddha, and Ashuddha. If you know those three terms in Vedanta, then you can make a lot of ground in your understanding of the teachings when you read them. Basically, they're not talking again about morals and ethics, like whether I'm sinful or whether I'm virtuous or whether I've been a bad boy or whether I've been a good boy. That's not what they're talking about. When they say pure, impure, and mixed pure, impure, they mean how close it is to my Atman, or how far away has it gotten from my Atman, you see. Things that are farthest away become impure, like nature. They've turned into objects. Impure should not cast the aspersion of being gross or dirty, filthy or something, you see, or non-virtuous, sinful. It should convey the idea in Vedanta that it's far-flung. That's a nice term. It's gotten far-flung. It's very far away from the word, which is the origin of everything. So therefore, there it is, Ashuddha. So when you make the connection to the thing, that it's far-flung from your very self, then you can start saying it might be Shuddha. It might even start to look Shuddha, more pure, because I've made the connection to it. But if I haven't made that connection to it, even the very fear of separation makes it impure, you see. And it has no connection with me whatsoever. And you're living in a world of, how did he put it? In an illusory world of differences. Maybe none of you listening to me understand this right now, because you've long ago gotten over it. See, maybe I'm just talking to a brick wall here. But I want to make sure that you understand this in terms of the Advaita Vedanta that we're talking about right now, that there is a provision for it in Advaita Vedanta, just like there is in Patanjali's yoga, just like there is in Tantra and Buddhism and so forth. There is a provision for these levels of consciousness. So if you know them, it's not only you here that's concerned, it's those you run into, those you bump up against, those who you commune with. So you can ascertain their state. Oh, I see you don't know there's a connection yet, like I was saying at New Thought Church today, between smell and earth and taste and water and fire and sight and touch and air and hearing and sound. You see, I don't see a connection there yet. So when you see that connection, all of a sudden things become closer to you. They're not so far flung, are they? So therefore they're purer. Get the idea then? Then what's the most pure of all, you see? Because when you have knowledge of an object, but then the object disappears, it's almost like dreaming or deep sleep, isn't it? That's why I put this chart up, which we will get to. The A, U, and M of Om is pretty much connected to your waking, dreaming, and deep sleep state. So they want you to put this together with your actual experiences in the body on earth. You have to master the A of Om. You have to master the U of Om. You have to master the M of Om. And know that they go with Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. There's a trinity there, you see. There's a triputi there. There's a trio there. There's a triplet there. And connect all of those up, you see, because that's the grounds for even closer and closer samadhi. You see, deeper and deeper samadhi, where the object begins to disappear, like in deep sleep, but you still have knowledge of it. It's still inside of you. And hopefully you'll have that experience of deep sleep consciously one time, which is why you're practicing meditation, so that you will have it consciously. If you had it consciously in meditation, then your deep sleep state would transform and you would master it. You would know what's going on there. The third Lokatara Gyan, again in the review of this chart, is, he says here, knowledge when neither objects nor their perceptions exist, leading the seer to omniscience. So that gets beyond the A-U-M of Om and gets into Turiya. It's called the fourth. They didn't want to give that a name to limit it, so they just called it Turiya, the fourth. That's the fourth state of your consciousness, which transcends A-U-M. It's beyond the word. Or, if you want, it's where I and my Father are one. Or the Word was God. That kind of oneness. So, all of this is put in perspective of you and the object, isn't it? The subject and the object. You are not the object, you are the eternal subject. But if you know that all objects have come out of the eternal subject and you have still a connection with them, then you can always stay in a sort of samadhi, or in a sort of balanced condition, you see. That's why he says here, the rare condition of knowing Brahman is spoken of as naturally calm and controlled, because one's own nature is calm and controlled. Know this then and attain to calmness and control. When you come to Vedanta, or if you come to higher level of consciousness, you're not trying to get calm. You're not trying to control yourself. It's not like Sama and Dhamma. It's the inner peace and self-control. You already are calm and controlled by your very nature. That's the beauty of Advaita Vedanta that everyone's attracted to. Unfortunate, though, that most people who are attracted to it try and jump to it before they've even understood the dynamics of it. They try and make themselves perfect before they understand how to become perfect. That is, they're going to have to take the steps in order to convince themselves. Otherwise, there's always going to be some doubt, or, read my stotram, some fear, some sense of difference between you and that thing, that object, that person, that body, that host of bodies, that other race, that other culture, that other world, that other dimension. Should I fear my ancestors? Fear the devils? Fear the angels? Fear the asuras? Fear the demigods? Fear the deities? Or should I realize that they all exist inside of me? And then we can all get along just fine, thank you very much. They are harmonized in me. I am that, that is in me. And that's living in a state of calm and controlled, naturally calm and controlled mind. So he says the same thing below, doesn't he? All entities are by nature calm and unoriginated from their very outset. They are the nature of nirvana. You're looking for nirvana here and there, you think it's beyond objects. Those very objects are existing in nirvana. Why? Because you are in nirvana and those things have come out of you. You see? Why should you distance them further? You'll just create a remedy without a disease without a remedy, see? Without a cure. As you fling them further away from your true nature. You're practicing the yoga of oneness now. Unfortunately, what's going around nowadays in this world is the yoga of apathy. The yoga of disinterest. So, how he puts it then, if we want to conclude this chart for a second time, is you need to know what's fit to be abandoned. You need to know what's fit to be secured, what's fit to be known, and what's specifically fit to be known. The specifically fit to be known is Brahman, which is your true nature, your own Atman. And that's paramount. That's first and foremost. Know thyself, or know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Those kinds of sayings that we hear repeated are paramount. But if you start from the lowest stage, first you ought to know what's fit to be abandoned. Lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, fear, pride, pride of caste, pride of lineage, shame, fear, doubt. On and on goes the list, you see. And if you want to put it very simply, the way Gaudapada is putting it here, what's fit to be abandoned is the sense of separation. then you know the oneness of everything, the interconnectedness of all things. To know the interconnectedness of all things brings you to that pinnacle that Buddha reached in his meditation under the Bo tree, where he could then distance himself from everything that was unreal. Then he could make the separation from nature, from all things with form, so he could have the highest Lokatara Gyan, Samadhi. Nirvana, as it's called here. So know what's fit to be abandoned and stay on vigil with it. What's fit to be known? You could say that's going to be the Dharma. You see, those teachings which come to you via your illumined parents, if you had such things. If you didn't have those, then those preceptors, acharyas and gurus and teachers that came to you somewhere in your life which taught you the Dharma. And that's what's fit to be known. Because that will, without a doubt, get rid of all doubt, beyond fear. And then what is fit to be secured is the realization of the Dharma via your sadhana, your spiritual practice. You can't just hear the Dharma and then assume or conclude that I'm free. You have to hear the Dharma and you have to put it into practice and bring it full circle. Practice it, realize it, here in this very life. Then you will know what's specifically fit to be known. It will be revealed unto you. So just like that, in the 4 stages, Gaudapada puts it in juxtaposition to the 3 kinds of knowledge samadhis. I hope that's clear and a good review now from last week, because, and actually before we exit that particular teaching, I will read you the actual slokas from Gaudapada's Karika. The rare condition of the knowers of Brahman is spoken of as naturally calm and controlled, owing to one's own nature being calm and controlled. Know this then and attain to calmness and control. For a calm and controlled one, the dual with its objects and perceptions is looked on as practical. The dual without its objects, but with its perceptions intact, is looked upon as pure and practical. But the dual without its objects and without its perceptions is traditionally known as the super-practical. Knowledge, the object of the knowledge, and particularly the knowable, these 3 are always proclaimed by the enlightened. Knowledge and the threefold objects of knowledge become known gradually or in order. Omniscience of its own accord accrues here on all sides to the one of illumined intellect. What is fit to be abandoned, what is fit to be known, and what is fit to be secured, and what is fit to be made perfect are to be known by the Agrayana. Of these, of the 3, excluding that fit to be particularly known, perception is said to take place. So that kind of objective perception disappears when you understand or when you have communion with that which is specifically fit to be known. That's your own self. All entities by nature are well ascertained to be Adi-Buddhas, ever enlightened. One who has self-sufficiency in this way is said to be immortal. All entities indeed are calm from the very outset, unoriginated, and very blissful, of the nature of nirvana itself. They are always the same and non-different. Their being is unoriginated, equal, and self-confident. But there is indeed no self-consciousness in the case of those who move about believing in an illusory world of differences. Those who hold the doctrine of separateness descend into a world fraught with differences. They are traditionally known as nervous wrecks and are very pitiable. Fully opposite are those who establish themselves in the truth of non-origination. For they possess the highest and fullest knowledge in the world. The world, however, does not delve into it, even upon seeing them. So, back to the topic today at the church, at the New Thought Church, about the Savior being an exemplar instead of the avatar being an exemplar, not just a Savior. If we take the great beings as just saviors, then we rob ourselves of the ability to become enlightened like they are. And they are waiting for us to step up to that state of the agrayana, is the word used here. It's like the arhat, or like the illumined soul, the jivan mukta or the bodhisattva. That level of understanding awaits all beings, and what they need to do is, according to Gaudapada's simple description, is to realize that all beings here are pure and perfect. Everything is unoriginated. It doesn't begin, have a middle and end. It doesn't come, stay, and go. See? Coming and going is all pure nonsense, as Vivekananda said. Where will the soul come from when all of space is in the soul? And at what time will it come and go when all time is in the soul? That's why you can harp again and again on this teaching of Kingdom of Heaven is within you, Kingdom of Heaven is within you. Take unto yourself what is the Lord's, because that is what's pure and perfect. That's the highest wisdom samadhi, and it leads to bliss samadhi, and eventually the bliss samadhi will lead to an egoless samadhi or formless samadhi, asampragyata or nirvikalpa, what Buddha called nirvana. So those are all well set up in the scripture with words very poetic and very convincing. That's a quote right out of the Upanishads. With words very poetic and words very convincing, those kinds of teachings are key or core to the matter of your spiritual life. Now, so that we understand a little better the precept of non-origination, I brought again this chart on what's called aparinama, non-transformation. And I was going to put it together with this chart on the Vedantic and conventional views of birth and death. Let's look first at the chart on non-transformation, as this is a gift of a little work on my part, but really taken from the writings in the letters of Swami Vivekananda. He said, somewhere around 1893, a kind of scientific Advaitism has been spreading throughout Europe ever since the theory of the conservation of energy was discovered. But all that is parinama, evolution by real modification, as contrasted to aparinama, progressive manifestation by unreal superimposition. Now that's quite a mouthful right now. And it is basically that the way the West looks at things is via transformation, that there's change going on and the change is actual. Evolution by real modification, that is, something gets created out of nothing, then when it's in the realm of existence, it begins to change, it begins to grow, and that growth and that change is considered real. Real modification. There are real modifications going on there, but that's never how the seer of India looked at things. Always looked at it as if it were a show, if it was a play, as if it were a dance, as if it were a dream. He goes on to say that Ravanuja's theory is that the bound soul has its perfections involved, and when this perfection occurs, it becomes free. So he's talking about modification, isn't he? All of these imperfections in you are getting made perfect over time by some sort of transformation process you're going through. But the Advaitin declares that involution and evolution take place only in show. Both processes are in Maya, and so are apparent only. This is how he tried to explain to us who were, at the time in 1893, caught between the press of seven-day creation theory and the evolutionary theory. Between a rock and a hard place, as my teacher used to say. We needed a way out, and that way out was the truth of aparinama, non-transformation. It's really very much the same thing, if not exactly the same thing, that Gaudapada is talking about here when he calls it non-origination. You cannot produce something whose nature is to be unproduced. what you're actually doing is calling something from its unproduced nature into form, aren't you? But when you call it into form, is it actually becoming the form? Is it a real modification, or is it just an appearance? Is it taking on a form, but it's never changing its true nature in its underlying essence? See? So that's the idea of what he calls false superimposition. It's very big in Advaita. Vivarta is the word. It's one of the earliest words I ever learned in my Vedantic studies. And I learned another word along with it called adhyasa. This is sort of, and adhyaropa and apavada, how things get covered by Maya to make them look other than what they are. That is, their essence is always unproduced. Didn't we just say that the object is outside of you? When it is, it's impure. And then when the object is closer to you in your mind, then it becomes more like formless. See, now you have the thought of the object, but not the real object. And then when the object goes completely inside and loses its form, then it becomes a part of the formless nature. It's returning to its unproduced state. And you have the ability as a meditator to do that. As I was telling the people at the New Thought Church today, you call it all back. You see, if somebody insults you, you say, take it back. So if nature insults you with birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death, fear, doubt, destruction, then you say, take it back to your mind, and it begins to take it back. Takes it back in dream state, and it takes it back in deep sleep state. You're doing that every 24 hours. Now sit in meditation one day and take it back consciously. Because you projected it, you can take it back. And this all begins to show you that everything came out of the mind. It all came out of the mind. All objects are manifestations of your thought. And this all of a sudden puts you at odds and down a different path than people who are believing in creation theory. Oh, that I can get something out of nothing. That somehow out of dust a soul was produced. It has to be taken symbolically at best. Can't be taken literally because it's not sensible and it's not practical. You're going to be one of those people that turns into a nervous wreck if you follow such a world of differences. What you're looking for is that innate connection, that intrinsic connection of yourself with the object, so that you know for sure that that was my responsibility. That was not God's responsibility. That was not devil's responsibility. It was not nature's responsibility. It was my own mind's responsibility. I'm at fault. I'm to blame. Or I'm to praise. If my world is a good one, and I'm seeing everything rightly, and my mind is sattvic, then I'm to praise. I don't praise God for that, nor blame devil for it. So this is closer to the truth of the matter, called non-duality, and that word, parinama, pegs it. Or a word like ajativada, non-origination, pegs it. Pegs it close to you, right to your heart. See. Now, both processes are in Maya then, these processes of change. They're taking place somewhere else, sort of like in your dream. Gaudapada used to say, a runner runs a race in a dream, but does he go anywhere? Does he see scenery go by? Does he get exercise? He wakes up in his own bed, the dream is all taking place in Maya somewhere, you see. It never took place in reality, did it? It was all a projection. Well, that dream happens to be dream number 2, your waking state. If those of you who love Ramana Maharshi and his teachings, he teaches the exact same thing. Dream number 1 and dream number 2. In other words, he got that from Gaudapada. Gaudapada got it from Vasishta, and Vasishta got it from Krishna. And it went all the way back to souls who knew the nature of reality from the very get-go. They knew that it was all a projection, all a dream, and that their self never went anywhere. Magnificent to self, everywhere at once, unmoving, untouched. It's the non-touch yoga. So coming at us again, millennia later. Well, here's a few examples. This one I just mentioned. Here's Gaudapada's own quote. All happenings take place in relativity. Taking place in relativity resemble the activities of a man running a race in a dream. Nothing actually transpires. Scenery, movements, race, dream, all are unreal or apparent only. The dreamer alone is real, but he must awaken to realize this. So he must distance himself from that projection that's going on in his mind and see himself as witness. Krishna puts it this way: the unreal has no existence. The real never ceases to be. The truth about both has been realized by the seers. Coming into being and ceasing to be do not take place in the Absolute. It is unborn, eternal, constant, and timeless. So, Shankara, Gaudapada, Vishishta, now Krishna, see, all saying the same thing, aren't they? Trying to drive in that idea to our mind about parinama, non-transformation, because we believe so thoroughly in change. See, change is going on all around us, so it's convincing us all the time. I'm getting older. My child is being born. My great-grandfather's passing away. Change, change, change on all sides you see cropping up. But has everyone ever seen the destruction of everything? Has anyone ever seen that? Destruction doesn't exist. Here we are, still existing. Destruction going on all around us, but we still exist. And even when man is gone from the planet, you see, science knows that there's still the universe. So even if you take that perspective, doesn't everything exist at all times? Even if you only take it on the physical level. So who has ever seen the destruction of everything? The mantra, therefore, is everything is, everything is. Aham Atma, I am. I am the self in all. So these are sayings that are always put forth, you see. And there's some words for it there in the middle of the circle. Pratyagatman, Antaryami, Kutastha, Sakshi, Atman. Those are all words that have to do with this non-dual level of consciousness. Sakshi is witness, Kutasha is substratum. Antaryami is that inner ruler, immortal and invisible, seated in your heart. It's the Supreme Atman. And there's the word too, right at the apex of it all. Now, the main reason, that's the top half of this chart. The main reason for bringing up this chart is to look at this trickle-down process. And what happens first here is intelligence, knowledge, sattva. Vivekananda says, though knowledge, being a compound, cannot be the Absolute itself, it is the nearest approach to it and higher than will or desire. So this is the first thing out the gate, is this particle of intelligence we've been talking about, this vibration of intelligence. It's everywhere. It's at the behest of everything. There are some examples of it. Chidabhasa, pure intelligence reflecting off of reality. Now, if you just change the chart for the viewers for a second, you'll see the principle of Chidabhasa right here. It's also why I brought this chart as an addendum. Basically, it gives us a view of the way the ancient rishis, and Vedanta particularly, looks at this. There's the quote from Vivekananda first. God is not in the universe is in God. This is pretty much a summation of what we were just saying about all these things being inside of you, right? If you're looking for God in the universe, you've got a long time to wait and a long, hard road to hoe before you see anything that even resembles the formless reality here. But if you think the other way and turn it on its ear, just a 2% shift of your consciousness and think, oh, actually, I shouldn't be looking for God in the universe. I should be looking to see that the universe is in God. All of this is in reality. Doesn't it sound like all beings are in nirvana? They're all calm, they're all controlled, they're all perfect, you see? They're all resting in nirvana. Why should I project difference on it? Why shouldn't I just rest there with them? In calm, controlled state, naturally, he says. See, this is what he's trying to communicate to us. So, the whole idea of Chittavasa, which he was just describing as a chart, there you see it trickling down. There is an absolute reality called Brahman, and like rain of grace coming through the Mahashakti is this Buddhi, or this cosmic intelligence. It all pours down and forms into this flow of intelligent particle, this stream of consciousness. You put it in different ways in Buddhism and in Vedanta and in Tantra. So all of that trickling down, down means out, from a very, very refined place, even more refined than the word, out through the word, and out into the cosmic intelligence, sometimes called God's mind, Mahat. And that is the beginning of Chittavasa. Chittavasa means the reflection of consciousness. An example of the reflection of consciousness would be Moses in the burning bush, or Paul seeing Christ on the road to Damascus, or other visions like that. The Vedantas say they're not really seeing a burning bush, they're not really seeing Christ on the road to Damascus, they're seeing an emanation, they're seeing Chittavasa, they're seeing a reflection of consciousness cast from a causal or a subtle state into the physical realm. Sort of like a mirage in the desert. It's not really, the water's not really there. So you're getting this reflection of consciousness, and it's all reflected intelligence dancing in front of you. See? Depends on how pure and refined your intelligence is, how you see that emanation. But that's what they say. You won't, in other words, as John said, nobody has ever seen God. Nobody has ever seen God with his eyes. That's Chittavasa right there. You don't see God here in the universe. You must see the universe in God. What you'll see is a lot of reflection of God here. It's the reflection of the light of intelligence which spills off of the Om, off of the Word. In order to realize that, as Ramakrishna said, when I first saw Om, I saw everything coming out of it, and I saw everything going back into it. Rising and falling, constantly. No end to it, no beginning to it. He couldn't put a moment of beginning on it, and he couldn't put a time of ending on it. He saw that it was all rising and falling all the time. See? So, down here, where we are, with the body and the five senses, which are imperfect by nature, what we're seeing in nature, like sunlight shining off of leaves, see, reflections, just like that. There's a reflection of that light shining in higher realms too. And the seers are beholding it and they're passing beyond it. See, I see Chittavasa is working. I see everything is a reflection of consciousness. It's a reflection of intelligence. But I want to make my way to the source. I want to see that ocean of light. I want to dive into it. I want to measure it. Ha ha. Mm-hmm. Salt doll went to the ocean to try and measure it, you see. You're made of that. You are one of the aspects of Chittavasa. We're looking at each other. Reflections of that same Brahman. Don't we say that? See, we're all reflections of that same reality. We are God walking around on two legs. But how many have gotten very close to that kind of insight? See, to really check it out, to really inspect it, to observe it long enough to know how true it is. If anything goes down further than the intelligence, then you see this is where prana, vital energy, where akasha, that is space, different kinds of space, subtle energy, subtle worlds, higher gradated beings, as we see here, and human ego-mind complex begins to form, that is thoughts, conceptualization, visions, imagination, projection, invention, desire. Finally, time and space kicks in. You see, 5 subtle elements, 5 gross elements. The physical universe appears. and the flow of all events in time, and basically all the karmas that are going on that tie people in to the process. Those karmas that are going to have to untie in order to get out of that process and free themselves, to be released into moksha or mukti. And finally, human embodiment takes place, the very physical body itself, the 5 senses of knowledge and the 5 senses of action. This is all a trickle-down process called Chittavasa. It's one of the very beautiful teachings of Vedanta. And one of the main facets of the teaching is, remember, that's a reflection you're seeing. So please change the chart back, because I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on that. That's where this idea of Chittavasa here comes, you see. Where is it? Right here. Pure intelligence reflecting reality. It's pure intelligence that's merely reflecting reality. It's not the reality itself yet. You're not seeing the original. You're seeing reflection at a very high level of intelligence. The first compound, remember he said that? Intelligence is the first compound. It's not reality itself, but it's the first thing out the gate. Those particles of intelligence, vibrating with light. There you see some other facets. Anubhav, one of those great words I used today in our talk at New Thought Church, means direct perception of the Atman, direct perception of reality. That happens through this highest intelligence. Paravidya happens there, the sacred wisdom of the non-dual scriptures. We just chanted. That's the sure and certain proof of enlightenment, is the revealed scriptures. So many souls, so many seers and saints and illumined souls, leaving behind a record of their spiritual experiences, right on up to the highest realization. That's the sure and certain proof that this exists. For just an occasional person, you might have some reason to doubt. But hundreds and thousands have come through the gate and said, follow the light. There's the light. See, the light of intelligence. That's the reflection. Follow the reflection. You'll get to the real reflector. See? All of this is reflected by the sun's light. We follow that up to the sun, you see. But where would you follow the sun to? To those billions of suns that are inside of you, shining with the light of knowledge. A sun knows no darkness. And that's much more the case with the sun in the mind, in the intelligence. Ahamta vritti is there, self-arrogating thought. No, I skipped one. Upalabdhi is there, insight via divine remembrance. There's an important word in the realm of intelligence called Smriti Bedu. It means causal memory. We have a causal memory of everything that's back inside of us. We're not just going on this as being proof, but we can trace all of this with inside. That's how we're going to prove to ourselves that all of this exists within us. There's another way of going about it. That's just tracing the origin back to your causal memory, to how many births you've had. And that's done in meditation. It could happen to you in the walk of everyday life that you all of a sudden have a very profound memory from your past lifetime come to you. But moreover, more likely it's going to be when you sit and you meditate deep enough, you'll have these remembrances of events that happened to you, say, for instance, like having your first samadhi, your first conscious samadhi, or having your first conscious birth. Those kinds of things are stored back in the memory. You have to get to them and take them out, you see. A matter of divine remembrance, as he says here, upalabdhi. So if that's the first compound, you can see how powerful it is. What comes rolling off of Brahman, emanating off of that sun of wisdom, like Chittavasa, and turns into this intelligence with its various facets. His next quote is, the divine first becomes knowledge, then, in the second degree, will. So then will comes about. You can see those listed here. Intuition, abhikya, it's called in Sanskrit. sense of separate I-ness kicks in. That's called ahamkara. Ahamta vritti, self-arrogating thought. And aparavidya, secular intelligence. So you can see the difference between mind and will and intelligence and knowledge. One is very sattvic, right? One is very rajasic or active. So first degree off of Brahman, first thing out the gate, intelligence. Second thing out the gate, mind and will. Sort of like we were looking back at this Chittavasa chart, you see, how everything trickles down that way. Now his next quote. And keep in mind what he said at the top of this chart, that parinama is evolution by real modification, and that's how science thinks and so forth. But aparinama is progressive manifestation by unreal superimposition. All of these are reflections, you see. So inside of that context, he says, it is this. He says, if it is, this is the evolution. Less and less in the body and more in the mind. Man, the highest form, meaning manas, thought, the animal that thinks, and not the animal that senses only. So he's saying if there is any transformation going on, it's here in the mind. He's not admitting that there is. He's already made a statement that aparinama is the highest truth. There is no transformation going on, but he's giving us this concession. If there is transformation, if you want to give it any room at all in your philosophy, there it is. It's in the mind. Your mind is making it transform. Your mind is dual. Your mind is seeing the objects. Your mind is causing separations. Your mind is forgetting its causal memory, and so forth and so on. So that's something that's up to you, again. It's your responsibility to correct that view that your mind has taken. Right orientation is a part of the Eightfold Path of Buddha, you see. Right orientation. Right perspective, right view, right orientation. Those are extremely important. If the mind gets a little skewed for a while and that time passes, then that skewed mind, that slightly skewed mind, will turn into many, many errors, one on top of the other, until finally the poor man cannot find himself back out. Holy Mother said, a screw, you take it out, it should go back in the same way, right? But then it goes in skewed, you see. If you ever had that, if you're working with hammers and nails and screws, that screw should just go back in the same way it came out. But no, you see, it's going in a whole different way. So she's talking about man's intelligence. You get a little screw loose in there and try and put it back in, it goes in the wrong way. So very delicate balance there in the mind of a human being. Has to be very carefully mastered, you see, very, very carefully taken apart and put together. So some of those things there, again, intuition, sense of separate I-ness, self-arrogating thought, that is, thought that thinks that I am the doer, for instance, and secular intelligence as compared to higher intelligence. All of those things are properties of the mind, and they're, as it were, a second compound in the reflection process, Chittavasa process. In other words, you know what I'm saying? They're getting far flung. If we want to go back to an earlier part of this class, you see, the trickle-down process is getting far away from the source. It's not so pure anymore. Now it's mixed pure, and pretty soon it's going to get impure. See? In other words, it's going to get very far flung. It's going to turn into gross objects. Consciousness is actually going to turn into gross objects. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that. One of his favorite views was, in my early spiritual practice and my early spiritual realization, I saw that all this Brahman had become all this. He used to say that. So he had that eye to see. He had that Laukika Gyan. He had that Shuddha Laukika Gyan. You see, he had those higher samadhis which were telling him all of this is connection, but actually if that connection is really followed to the hilt, all of this is nothing else but Brahman, because no transformation has taken place. There can be nothing but Brahman. So the transformations that have taken place in between are unreal. They're non-actual. They're apparent only. They're in show. In the show of Maya, who's a grand master at showmanship, I can tell you. Providing so many things for people to get allured, distracted with. Become cross-eyed with delusion. Make their eye dual instead of single. Well, as it trickles down here, then that's what he said. It's, if there is any evolution going on, any transmigration, any change or transformation going on, it's in the mind. It's all happening in your mind. It's not actually happening in reality. So there you see the products of that. Sense knowledge and sense perception. Something called Vedana, feeling, sensations, coming from contact with objects. Vedana is actually one of the nidanas of Buddhism, one of the links for rebirth. Conditioning. It's from your experiences you get conditioned, the mind gets conditioned, and that mind holds that conditioning. At the time of death it cannot let it go. And so it comes back again conditioned. So Vedana, together with Trishna, thirst for things, is a very powerful combination that keeps the ego complex gelled, crystallized, so that it cannot let go at the time of death or at the time of meditation. So, brain, senses, and desire we're talking about, aren't we? Also vasana, desires based on past experiences, are there. Now you're seeing a trickle-down process that's getting very heavily conditioned or modified. It's getting played with. It's getting overlaid or superimposed over. And from that standpoint, a parinama seems impossible, you see. That all of this change is not true, is not occurring to people's heads. They don't have one inkling of a thought that that's unreal out there. That's as real as it can be to them. To science, to fundamentalist religion, to mundane human convention, to societies, all of that is as real as it can be. That's my oyster. Not one idea ever occurs in their head that that might be a false superimposition. That might be an illusion. That might be a reflection only of consciousness. And I'm not seeing the real thing ever when I'm looking at it. The closest I would get to seeing the real thing is if I were ever to really develop any intelligence. See? Any real intelligence. Intelligence beyond secular knowledge that would take me to scriptural knowledge. Then I might begin to get closer to the source of consciousness. Well, guess what? We come full circle back to Gaudapada again, because there's a nice quote from him right there. So long as the upadhis are present, the jivas retain their individuation. Do you know those words? Upadhis are your body, your energy, your mind, your intelligence, things like this. As long as those sheaths, is a word that we translate upadhi into English, we say sheath, a covering. Like Sri Ramakrishna used to say, you pick a piece of grass and you pull the inside layer out the outside layer and you chew on the inside layer. Mm-hmm. You ever do that as a kid? He said that's like an upadhi. There's a sheath over another thing, you see. And the inside essence is in there. So there's an inside essence inside of all these sheaths. Our outer sheaths, our body, and pull that off, you see, and there's an inner prana, and pull that off, there's another mind in there, and pull that off, there's intelligence, you see. So, upadhis, sheaths, coverings. You have to pull them off, see through them, see them as a part of the process of transformation, which is not accurate, it's not true. You have to reverse the process. I've run the process now, I have to reverse it. I drove a car 200,000 miles. Now I have to drive it in reverse. So the odometer goes backwards, you see. Whatever it takes. I have to withdraw or retract the chain of evolutes that I projected back inside of me. It's called Laya Yoga. We were talking about it today with the New Thought Church people. Laya Yoga. Laya means dissolution. If I projected it, I need to dissolve it. So, the jivas are embodied beings. So, to repeat that, so long as the apadis are present, as long as you see these sheaths, then you, the jiva, retain your individuation. You are attached to those sheaths. If you were just associated with those sheaths, it wouldn't be so much of a problem. And actually, if you were just associated with them, you'd probably be in Laukika Gyan. You'd probably know the connection between yourself and the sheaths and the objects. Because your physical sheath is really not that much different than the sheath of a tree or the sheath of a body of water, you see. They're similar. They're projections. He goes on, but the Paramatman, the Supreme Self, undergoes no change due to these superimpositions. That is, when those sheaths come upon you, your Supreme Self undergoes no change whatsoever. It's taking on false superimpositions that were never really true in the first place. You're projecting them. You know our favorite old story, screen, movie, projected on it, explosions of war, tears of pathos. Go up to the screen afterwards. Not a rip in the screen from the explosion. No wetness from the tears. See, the screen just simply sat there, you see, and was unaffected. The screen is Brahman, and the guy up there, you see, in the booth is your willpower. Your mind is the projector, you see. And hopefully that willpower has a little bit of intelligence in it. And the movie you projected was a good one, you see. But the important thing is the screen never underwent any change due to all the phenomena that was superimposed upon it. All the phenomena are the events of your life, your many lifetimes. Everyone's many lifetimes. That's called phenomena. Phenomenon. So yourself never undergoes any change in the midst of all that mass of phenomena that's going on. He uses an example to help you. As the clay pot is not a transformation of the unchanging akasha, space, so too the jiva is not a transformation of the immutable Paramatman, who had these changes projected upon it by ignorant minds. So, the mind did all the projecting, the self stood by, pure, perfect, unmoving, unchanging, witness, underlying substratum, unaffected, unseen seer, unstruck sound, inactive actor, inactive agent. You can find a bunch of nice appellations to assign to that unmoved mover. Now, in the remaining time in the first half, which is maybe enough just to show you what we mean, for out of all of this, then, if we see this chart on a parinama non-transformation, we can see it put here, on the left-hand side of this chart, under the Vedanta heading. On the right-hand side of the chart, I put a combination of the theory of evolution and the seven-day creation theory of the fundamentalists. So basically you could see here, what do they say? We start on the premise that existence is. Probably if you put it that simply, nobody could refute it. Because nobody's going to say, I don't exist. Everyone's going to say, I am. They're not going to say, I'm not. You can't stand there in front of them saying, I'm not an entity. See? Everyone can say you're an entity. What kind of entity remains to be seen, but nevertheless you're an entity. So we start on the premise that everything is. We call that everything is Brahman, Atman, consciousness, awareness, truth. Now, on one side is the principle of manifestation by unreal superimposition, right? Our quote from the last chart. The principle of manifestation by unreal superimposition, that's what Vedanta says is happening here. And on the other side is the theory of evolution by real modification, his other statement there. This was in one of his letters he wrote to some of his brother monks. So there they are, side by side. Now, Vedanta says Ajativada, non-origination. Gaudapada's Karika, which we're just reading out of that, studying it. That's the main word as far as Gaudapada is concerned. Nothing has an origin. There's no beginning, middle, and end to anything. Everything exists all the time. It's just a matter of whether it exists outwardly or inwardly. And that outwardly means manifestation, and that inwardly means non-manifestation. That outward means production, the inward means non-production. The outward means the changing object, and the inward means the eternal subject. So non-origination is what Vedanta says. Theory of origins is there, both in science and in religion. That is, dualistic religion or fundamentalist religion. The idea of origins is there. Whether it's the origin of a universe or a big bang on one side, or the origin of the soul being created out of dust or nothingness out of the other, you see. So whichever way you look in science and conventional or fundamentalist religion, you find that idea of origins being real. But Vedanta is refuting it all the time. Advaita Vedanta and the non-dual schools of India are always refuting it. No, it's a Jativada. There is no origination. I dare you to find the beginning of anything and the end of anything. Because once you arrive at what you think is the end, you'll find out it has a continuation. Everything goes in cycles. Like a river, everything returns, Buddha said. And he had to sit a while to see that. Just mere 49 days or so, see, to finally trace it all back. So tracing origins is a very powerful thing. It's a very powerful way. In our tradition it's called Utpatti. Vishishta, the teaching of Lord Vishishta. You trace origins back to, as far as you can, back inside. This is what you're doing when you connect smell to earth and water to taste, right? You're beginning to trace the origin of the 5 elements. Where do they come from? And you trace them back subtly inside you to the kingdoms of heaven within you, and you reverse the chain of cause and effect until you find the origin, the original cause, which to us would be Om, the word. Now, how about this word? We just had it, aparinama. Vedanta declares non-transformation. In other words, to put briefly, spirit projects matter. Matter is a projection of the mind. Over here, parinama, transformation, spirit becomes matter. Of course, that's only if you admit that spirit exists. Or you could say spirit is matter, or matter is spirit. That's one of the first tantric evolutes. I am the body. So that's the idea of putting spirit and matter together, whereas you can't find the differentiation between the two. It's non-discrimination. Now, these are the 2 highest of all declarations by the Advaita Vedanta. Ajativada and Aparinama. Those are the 2 great pillars on which Advaita Vedanta is built. Non-transformation, non-birth, and non-death. Those are going to be as essential to non-dualism as you can get. If you come down the ladder, cosmic materials. What about the cosmic materials? Where do they come from that project? I just said spirit projects matter. So where does it get the materials from? They're subtle and undetected. They come from unmanifested Prakriti. And that's one of the great facets of the 24 cosmic principles. It's called Prakriti. And it's unmanifested form. So that's something that we're missing in the West. We can't, for instance, look out on the universe and we don't have any teaching that leads us to the fact that says, oh, the tree was once unproduced. In other words, the only place we can go is that the tree started in its seed. Then where did the seed start? The seed was produced by another tree. So we get into this circular kind of reasoning. But where did the original tree or the original seed come from? Oh, it came from matter. It is matter. So we end up in matter only, in physics only. So when you want to find out the origin of the physical universe, where do you go? If you go to the Big Bang, you say, who caused the Big Bang? Or what was in the Big Bang that was so able to produce matter over time, over many billions of years, to produce planets, universe, and so forth. But Vedanta takes you in a different direction. It says nothing was ever produced. It was only drawn from something, from its essential nature. And when it leaves its essential nature, it never changes its nature. That's the secret. It appears to change, but you don't want to fall into the realm of appearances. That's called Maya. Don't worry about that. Just know that the thing you're looking at is eternal, calm, is not having a problem with its projection like you are. Mm-hmm. You're the one that's having a problem, you see, with that tree and its rot, or that frog and its dissection, or that human being and its cancer. You're the one that's having the problem. Everything, the thing in itself is calm and collected and eternal and unchanging. That's the important thing, unchanging. Cancer can't eat it away. You see. Time can't erode it. Or if you go to the Gita, as Krishna told Arjuna, a sword can't cleave it, water can't drown it, an elephant can't step on it, fire can't burn it. Go out into the battle and know that you're birthless and deathless, and so are all those other beings. Then you'll be equipped with the idea of a parinama and a jativada. There's no birth and there's no death for me, and there's no change for me either. Thank you very much. Birthless, deathless, changeless. And what about the cosmic materials? They too are that. And they come out of an unmanifested state. That's their nature. They're unproduced in their nature. When they get produced, they don't change their nature. They just appear to be different. Now I've got false superimposition to deal with, don't I? So Vedanta comes forward and says, we have a word for that, Vivarta. Or Tantra comes forward and says, we have a word for that, it's called Maya. Or Buddha comes forth and says, we have a word for that, it's called Samsara. Don't worry about it. Samsara is Nirvana. So it's not like the words of the old song, something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. It's more like there's nothing happening here. And that's completely clear to me. My name is clarity. And my clarity is intense. So what about across the board? Cosmic materials are non-existent and then created out of nothing. Seems to be a problem there. See, because you can't get something out of nothing. That doesn't make sense to me. There has to be something originally in order for you to get something from it. As he just said, the clay pot's not a modification of the akasha. See, you can't get something from nothing. It's either completely one with its nature all the time, or, it's a son of a barren woman. It just doesn't make any sense. It has to make sense. It has to be practical, rational, true. It has to ring true. So this is where unmanifested Prakriti becomes a great was going to say savior, but maybe I should say exemplar to us in this day and age, in the West, because we didn't have anything like it taught to us, that all form comes out of a formless state. And its nature is formless. We didn't have those teachings. See? We're believing in this, right? We're believing in theory of evolution by real modification. We think evolution is going on, it's going to continue going on, and things are getting modified. That means eventually things will get perfect. But is our world getting more perfect? Is it getting less polluted? Is it even changing its nature? Or does it just continue to change all the time? Maybe change is the unchanging. Change is the new unchanging, as they're beginning to say in certain circles. So then there's something suspect there. But if I look into the principle of unmanifested Prakriti, then I know that I'm just drawing something out of a chest of drawers, playing with it, and when I'm through playing with it, I clean it, iron it, fold it, and put it back in that chest of drawers so it's ready for the next cycle. That's unmanifested Prakriti. It'd be nice if I knew the Divine Mother who owned that chest of drawers too. So I know where everything comes from. Guess what? I'm free. I know where everything comes from. And because I know where everything comes from, I've also found out that the coming and going is all pure nonsense. That it never changes its nature while it appears to change. The next level, principle of thought projection is there in Vedanta. Atmik Sankalpa, across the board, principle of creation. Creator fashions all out of what? Question mark. Out of dust? Are you going to take that literally? Can a soul be created at all? Much less out of mere dust. Does God breathe life into you? That's symbolic, isn't it? Can you take that literally? So where's the truth in this? See, where's the substance? The truth is that the soul is unborn. We don't talk about creation and being born in my tradition. That's the talk of addled brains. You talk about the unborn, the acreate. Vivekananda used that word. He was the first one to coin it in his letters. Acreate. God is acreate. You haven't learned that yet in the West yet, have you? He said. It's never created. And not only is it never created, it never creates. As I was telling them at the New Thought Church this morning, you see, God is not the cause of anything. Mind-ego complex could be a cause. The word might be a cause. See, down here, the sperm getting together with the ovum might be a cause. See, but that's the physical cause alone. We're going to have to trace that through origins to find out that everything is originless. How many births and deaths do I have to have? How many sets of parents do I have to have before I know that all of that is non-actual? That I've been here the whole time, as my bodies have been being born and dying, that I've been looking on as witness to all of that forever. And it'll only stop when I decide to withdraw the dream. Isn't that what Gaudapada just said? Runner running a race in a dream. He finally realizes that he's the dreamer, and he has to wake up. Well, that's called enlightenment. We just defined it. It's knowing that time, space, living beings in the world are all Brahman. Quit asking the question, what is enlightenment? Shankara answered it back in 700 AD, and I'm sure it was answered long before him. All of this is Brahman. That's enlightenment. But you must be constantly aware of it. You must keep it in mind. We have done the first half of this chart. We have 5 minutes left. Let's see how much more we can accomplish. The next list The next item on the list is unmanifested Prakriti projected by Mahat appears as manifest nature on the Vedantic side. On the other side, nature is incepted from the void and formed by physical force. I don't really know how else to say it. That a Big Bang could produce matter? Or maybe a black hole sucks matter in and spits it back out? See? Whatever the case, it's physical alone, isn't it? It's physical only. What happened before the physical universe? What about all the other worlds? What about the kingdoms of heaven within you? What about those worlds? What's the Big Bang equivalent to there? A great thought? So unmanifested Prakriti, that is, everything held in abeyance back inside of you, projects the world through the cosmic mind. It's a projection, like a movie on a screen. And beings who meditate sit and just notice that, you see. They see it all as a projection. I can't tell you how many times I've come upon that statement about all of life and mind, all of the worlds and universes being a projection of the mind in so many different traditions in the East. It's just as if it's totally accepted there without any argument. They don't even argue amongst themselves, amongst the different sampradayas and different darshanas. Oh yeah, that's a given. They accepted it long ago. Something we need to do. Well, the next one's easy. Consciousness assumes forms, but souls are created from matter. It's the opposing view. Really? You can get a soul from matter? Or is it the other way around? Maybe matter comes from the soul. Or at least from the mind. The soul probably doesn't have anything to do with either of them. It just exists. It's a parinami. It's a jativada. The soul with a capital S. It doesn't participate in the drama, you see, in the play of dualities. It remains pure and perfect in its own pristine state, calm, collective, naturally so. Nirvanic so, Gaudapada says. So, which would you choose? No-brainer. In Vedanta, consciousness assumes form. That is, Brahman has become all this, as I just said. How did it do it? By Chitabhasa, by a trickle-down process. Did it take 4,320,000,000 years to do so? Or did it all happen in a flash? Or is it all happening all the time, in and out? And since it's so much there in my face all the time, I can't even see it. The constancy of consciousness. The actuality of awareness is there so much all the time that we've just gotten sort of blindsided by it, sort of used to it. We got used to our own true nature, being pure and perfect. And now we just project outward into the world of imperfection. And turning within and gazing at the original face is the rare move of an enlightened soul. Enough of this nonsense, you see. I think I will just return to the original. So, the pick between consciousness assumed forms and consciousness are created from matter is not a hard one for the practical and rational person. Now we've run out of time in our first half, so we're going to take a 15-minute break. You may, at home, if you're live streaming, take a look at this chart, these two charts closer, for a few minutes while we take our break here in Hawaii, and we will return in 15 minutes. Namaste. Welcome back, and we have returned to the second half of our third class in the series called Asparsha Yoga, Non-Touch Yoga, Advaita Yoga, the yoga of non-duality. And we've been taking some very profound thinking and thoughts of some great souls like Gaudapada and Shankara, Vasishta, Krishna, Swami Vivekananda in modern times. And we have been taking them apart and looking at them from many different directions, ending us up on this chart, which you saw in the first half of the class, and which we're going to complete right now. We actually went through over half of it, ending with the Vedantic adage or axiom that consciousness assumes forms. Assume is a good word. It's good that in English we have a few words like apparent or non-actual or assumption, so that we can mate those up with some of those great words in Sanskrit which have such profound philosophical meanings and implications. So when we say consciousness assumes form, of course we're hoping that consciousness won't identify with form to the extent that it will forget itself. And that's the next entry here. You see it on this side here. Consciousness is forgotten, and the body is seen as the only reality. That's called, of course, materialism and sensualism, even descends into hedonism and various other isms which are not healthy, especially for a spiritual life which is ongoing. So we need to not forget our consciousness. We must remain conscious of consciousness, or aware of awareness. And on the other side of the board, under the Advaita Vedanta heading, you see there, consciousness is aware, and it sports by associating with forms. So that's the follow-up to consciousness assume form, is that when it does so to sport, and it never forgets itself. It remembers itself as consciousness, so that it can let go of the form and always return to its source of origin, or better yet, to its originless nature. There you see the next heading. Under Vedanta, Prakriti rises and falls timelessly from unmanifested Prakriti. We had mentions of unmanifested Prakriti already, so we are going to speak about it again here as being so important to our Western understanding. Like that chest of drawers, everything is tucked back into. Trees, not just trees, whole forests, worlds even, are tucked back in at the end of long periods of time, back into that chest of drawers. The words they use in Sanskrit are placed in abeyance, is the term you'll hear translated into English. Everything is placed in abeyance. So basically it's in a formless state, it's inactive, it's sitting there in its essence, and it's just waiting to be called upon again to spring forth into manifestation. So they don't call that birth and death. Manifestation is not birth, non-manifestation is not death. It's simply like a wave rising in an ocean and falling back into the ocean. It's all coming out of an unmanifested, formless nature. But if you leave unmanifested nature out of the equation or out of the quotient, then you're left in the lurch when you try and formulate any kind of philosophy, even what to speak of a philosophy other than non-dual philosophy. Even if you try to form a philosophy of dualism, then you're left very much with a problem. Where do things come from, and where do they go? Well, let's just call it birth and death, or let's just call it Big Bang and then a void. You see. But you know my saying, you should avoid the void. You should annihilate nihilism. That's not going to leave you very far. It doesn't account for your consciousness, your awareness, your intelligence. It doesn't account for the enlightenment of the seers and sages and saints, those samadhis they've had, those nirvana, that nirvana that they've had. Those things are unaccountable and probably not the realm of physics, so it's okay they don't have an interest in them. But they should eventually, or will eventually, develop an interest in themselves. The intellectual does have an interest in his own or her own mind. They just have to define intelligence. They have to bring it out from hiding. See? And when you do that, you'll have philosophies like this, that the tree is just formed of your own intelligence. You take it apart, it appears to look like vibrating particles of physical matter, but its treeness, or the silverness of silver, or the goldness of gold, or the manliness in man, or the womanliness in woman, that's something essential, something unchanging, something aparinam. Those things are essence. There's a word for that we don't have in English, essence being about the only word we can borrow. It's called svarupa. And it's a very all-important word in Sanskrit, svarupa. One of my teachers, who was Holy Mother's direct disciple, very, very aged, when I met him, is called Swami Nitya Swarupananda. He's the essence of the eternal, the bliss of the essence of the eternal. Swami Nitya Swarupananda. It's a great, great soul. Well, on the other side, nature evolves over spans of time considered to be actual, and then again returns to that void. That is, if energy peaks and there's a big bang, then from there on it is all getting weaker and weaker and farther distance, and there's no provision made for it for returning. We see Swami Vivekananda used to say, if you drop a pebble in a puddle, then you see these series of waves go out and hit the shore and come back. So where is the coming back in science after the Big Bang? Where is the rationale of the cycle? The cycle is very all important. No doubt the illumined soul wants to get out of cycles. Buddha proved that and probably was the best known for it, although many, many souls did it before him. Nonetheless, under the collective eye of humanity, Buddha did it in recent times. 550 BC is not that old. It's not that distant, only a few thousand years. So those are Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam are new kids on the block, religiously speaking. You have to go back much further to find the more ancient religions. So the point being here is that there's this cycle and a return. See, the return is all important there too. The cycle could be evolution, and then, the return has to be involution, right? So it has to go to its source. There has to be an origin, a swarupa, an essence. And there is, when you consider yourself as being pure being. We were mentioning Shakespeare at the break, you see. To be or not to be is not a good question. You are. Go to the answer. Not to be is not a possibility. You are. I am. That is. Those are all great, great Mahavakyas, great sayings in the Upanishads. Some of them consisting of just 2 to 3 words. And that's all you tell your student. And that student had already known everything about where manifested Prakriti is and where cosmic materials come from. He'd already learned all that. It's called cosmology. We haven't got it yet in the West in modern times. So if you said a 2 or 3 word Mahavakya to a student who had received all these teachings, I've got it. See, that's it. I am now in Samadhi. See? And I will stay there. I know the way. You have awakened me, sir. Thank you. So even in India, in recent times, they were going up to Ramakrishna and saying, "Sir, what is the way?" Another man would come an hour later, "Sir, what is the way?" They've lost the way, even in India. Ramakrishna would usually say, "Try and cry 1 tear for God." That was his usual answer. Try and develop a little yearning for God. Because he knew the wisdom wasn't going to get to them yet, you see. Try and just develop a little bit of yearning again for the all-beautiful, for the all-attracting. Try and just envision that, what that true self is like. How full and how rich and how fulfilling it is compared to the suffering that you're going through that made you ask me a question, "Sir, what is the way?" See? Where did that question come from? So to be or not to be, not a good question. I am. The answer. I am. I always was. I always will be. I will never not be. However you want to put that, state it. Realize it. That's what we're talking about here. The penultimate entry here on this list, on the Vedantic side, souls consisting of consciousness rise and fall in and out of Brahman. That's the qualified non-dual way. Like all this has become Brahman is not a non-dual statement, but nonetheless, how can it be denied? And all here is Brahman is the non-dual realization. Then this appearance of becoming, if there is such a thing, happens in the mind, right? So you're going to have to provide for it, because the mind is individual, the mind is collective, and the mind is cosmic. Cosmic, there's nothing you can do about that. Individual, there's plenty you can do about that, but it's the collective you've got to worry about. The collective mind of humanity, and angels, and souls, and devils, and asuras, and titans, and deities. You see, the collective mind is there, the ancestors. That's collective karma you're talking about there. You buy into that, necessarily, when you take a form. Didn't we all? We still have a connection to our ancestors? Ay, ay, ay. See? All the karma we're paying and will continue to pay. On so many levels. So, think of that. Souls consisting of consciousness. That's the answer to the question up here. Well, what did you create a soul out of? Well, if I ever created a soul, I would probably have to do it out of my own consciousness, like I did everything else. I created the tree out of my consciousness, my bed, my pillow, my baby. See, so I guess I would create a soul out of the same thing, consciousness. So this question gets answered down here, you see. A soul consisting of consciousness rises and falls out of the ocean of Brahman. Takes on a form, gives it up, continually. Well, it sports that way, as it assumes forms. You see, everything goes from complete, stark, direct, shocking, shock, 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 as they say in the East. You see, you take up a microphone, they go, shock, shock, shock. And it's, all of this costs less than $2. As they put their wagons around. So, shock, shock, shock. This is shocking, non-dual reality, you see. And then it begins to explain everything in terms of qualified non-duality. But there's no place to hang your head here. See? What to speak of hang your hat, you're going to be hanging your head, you see, on this side. There's no place to go. Not just that I couldn't accept it if it were true. It'd just be called fatalism, you see. I could accept that. I'd still live a divine life. They asked Swami Brahmananda once, what would you do if you found out that all of this was not true? I wouldn't live any different. I'm in peace. I'm in bliss. Must have done something right here, see. So one lifetime of peace and bliss? Sure, that's enough. I can go into a void, into an emptiness then. What's there to fear anyway, if there is nothing? There's something to fear only when there's a something, but when there's a nothing, there's nothing to fear, see. So if that were true, I would just live the same way in my one life. But look at the possibilities, the richness of the philosophy, and the rationale described in poetic words which are very convincing, as the Upanishads state. See? I've already said that intelligence, where's that list? Intelligence, intuition, imagination, envisionment, I saw it there somewhere. A whole list of things that are possible to the mind, qualities and attributes, see, are possible to the human mind and intellect. So that is sporting, isn't it? Sporting in the realms of consciousness. It's playing in the fields of the Lord. So souls consisting of consciousness rise and fall in and out of Brahman all the time. What's the option here? Souls give themselves to the illusion of birth and death. If I believe that I was born, then I know I'm going to have to die. And what am I doing? I'm pretty much just one with nature, because that's what nature does. Everything is born and dies in nature. If birth and death were true, it would be in nature. It wouldn't be in your soul. Your body is a part of nature. Even your dreams are a part of nature, aren't they? Because you're dreaming plants, you're dreaming animals, you're dreaming insects, you're dreaming people and bodies. It's all nature. It's all manifested nature. And then when it goes formless, it goes back into unmanifested nature. There's an unmanifested insect world, an unmanifested animal world, unmanifested ancestor world. It's all formless. It's all in abeyance. Let it be. So, otherwise, if you are nature, you give yourself to the illusion of birth and death. Finally, we have souls assume form as long as the desire to experience individuality persists. Vedanta ends on a very practical note. See, if you want to assume a form, you'll do so just so long as your desires persist. As soon as you fulfill them, you will not assume form again. That's simple, really. Why should you come back if you'd have no desires? Unless you come back like him, Sri Krishna, you see. I have nothing to attain here, Arjuna, he says. Everything has been attained by me long ago. I only come back for the sake of other beings, for Loka Sangraha. Right out of the Gita. Loka Sangraha. Loka, the world, Sangraha, for the good of. For the highest good of the worlds. That's why I return. Because if I didn't return and I gave up action, all people would follow me and the worlds would fall apart. So I come back as an exemplar, not a savior. That's my example. So you too could come back desire-free, if you so wish. But as long as you assume that very strange situation called individuality with an ego, so long your desires are in operation. So long will you incarnate. What's it say across the board? The embodied soul lives one lifetime and then passes into heaven or hell. And of course that's not science, that's more toward the fundamentalist religion side of things. So that's your option, you see. Eternally damned or saved. Based upon if you were born after the year 1 AD. See? Because he couldn't accept Christ if you hadn't been born, because he didn't have an earlier incarnation. At least say that Christ had an early incarnation so that people before the year 1 AD could be saved too, you see. And they wouldn't just go to hell for no reason. Will you do that much for me, please? So the great efficacy, the great rationale of Vedanta is placed here for you side by side with some of the things that we believe in and we were raised in as Westerners. That is, some of us in the West. Many of us in the West. As I say, the thought that everything is non-originated is such a rare thought. It's just probably the rarest thought that ever happens, that nothing ever had a beginning. That beginnings, middles, and ends are all illusory, if you want to put it kind of bluntly. Beginnings, middles, and endings are all illusory. But there is Krishna in the Gita, you say. Beginnings, middles, and ends are unreal. And the unreal never is. And the real never ceases to be. The real is existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute, you see. So looking at this chart, in accordance with the teaching of a parinama that we got from Swami Vivekananda's letters around 1893, and a juxtaposition to that and some of the other pseudo-Advaitic schools that were beginning to crop up at the time, because they had also heard about this non-dual truth, and they were beginning to formulate their conclusions on it too. So we get the real dope straight from the horse's mouth here. We get the superlative sannyasin and the true monk, true monastic person in Swami Vivekananda coming forth and telling us about this highest non-dual philosophy as pertaining to great souls like Gaudapada and Shankara, who were some 1400 years earlier than Swamiji. Now I thought it would be good for us to look at non-touch yoga from the standpoint of the guru and the disciple. That is, we've looked at it as what kind of requisites there are, what you have to do to qualify yourself. And we've looked at the principles of non-touch yoga. We've also looked at it from the minds of different seers, 5 or 6 of them that we've taken up last class and this class. But let's look at it from the standpoint of the guru-disciple relationship. That's called guru-shishya in my tradition. And very, very important, because Vivekananda has said that you cannot get spirituality from books or temples. You can only get it from another soul. So in India, in those darshanas, those orthodox darshanas particularly, the guru-disciple relationship is of utmost importance, as you can get a direct transmission of spirituality from another soul who's realized. So this is a chart we haven't looked at for some time. It might even seem new to a few of you, but basically there you see a picture of the Lord Vashishta drawn by one of my students in the middle. Oops, that's not true. That's a different chart. You see actually yes, Vashishta and Sri Ram as drawn by one of my students with the Om sign there. And we see here, it's called the 10 conditions of the Guru-Shishya relationship. The quote here, by worshipping the embodied Guru devoutly, the disciple learns to follow the dictates of the infallible Guru principle within. Remember, Sri Ramakrishna also said, the mind soon becomes its own Guru when it begins to do its practices correctly. Knowing that the Lord is present in the universe of name and form as the eternal companion in sport, and as the compassionate guide in all trials and tribulations, lends a sense of peace and equanimity to the disciple's existence. From this calm, detached, and contented state of mind proceeds clear vision. So it's classic step-by-step process in the Guru-Shishya relationship. And I can attest to it in finding my own teacher, Swami Sheshananda Maharaj, how that gave me this extra confidence and this deeper commitment to the path, which I had been practicing 12 years on my own, about 11 years on my own before I met him. And I finally found a guide that I thought was fully qualified and ready to lead me into those levels of Advaita Vedanta that were so important, non-duality. So coming upon him, I saw an exemplar, again, of the highest order in that way, and was able to learn from him in such a way. Guru-Shishya relationship. Now, the reason I'm saying that it looks a lot like the non-touch yoga is that all these qualities that are listed here are exactly like that. They're almost perfectly described by the word non-touch. There you see the first 3 are very important to the process because they're the 3 main teachings of Advanced Vedanta. They're really called often the 3 proofs of truth. The 3 proofs of truth. Those are Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. very important for the disciple, or the Shishya as we're calling them here, to imbibe those. Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. In other ways, sometimes they're called Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. Really means pretty much the same thing. It means first, Shruti, you must hear the truth, and two, you must roll it around in your mind. That's called Manana or Yukti. Rationalize it, analyze it. And then three, realize it. Anubhava, or hear, or in the other Nididhyasana. It has to come full circle in that way. Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. So these are all things, again, that happen deeply within the mind. So very much a matter of non-touch, aren't they? That is, the teaching starts out in such a way that is very subtle, very sublime. Now, if you go on past Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava, you find number 4 as being Atmavichara, which is that very important facet of spiritual life that's known all the way from Lord Vashishta's time when he taught it to Sri Ram, all the way up to Ramana Maharshi in present times, is very much known for that principle of Atmavichara, asking the question, who am I? So basically it's that inquiry into the nature of the true self. Inquiry into the nature of the true self. Atma Vichara. So it proceeds by that question, who am I? But it really, the dynamics of it really work more from the statement or the principle of knowing what I'm not. In other words, that's why you become aware of the 24 cosmic principles, so that you can outline those things that you're not. You're not earth, air, fire, water, and ether. You're not your 5 senses. You're not your dream senses tonight. A runner running in a dream, a race in a dream, doesn't go anywhere, so you can't be any of those things. And you're nothing. You're not the ego in your mind complex, in your antakarana. So all of those things are very important for you to identify and pinpoint, and then say na, na, na. That's why at the very beginning Shankara sings Na mrityur na shanka, na me jati beda, pita naiva me naiva, janma na janma. He says, I'm not the death, I'm not birth, I'm not the body, and so forth. He goes, Aham nirvikalpa, aham. See, I am Brahman. But in the first verse, he says, Mano buddha hamkara, shitani naham. So, mano, mind, buddhi, intelligence, ahamkar, ego, chitta, its thoughts, the mind's thoughts. I am not those. He goes on through the whole 6 verses of that, what's called the Nirvana Shatkam, and says, na, na, na. That word occurs over and over again, just means no, I am not. I am not. I am not any of those things. So it's the definitive path to Nirvana. It's called Nirvana Shatkam, 6 verses on the royal road to Nirvana, or the highest non-dual state. So this is how Shankara would treat the method of Atmavichara, the question of who am I, by saying, this is what I'm not. If I get rid of all that I know I'm not, then who I am will come forward to me naturally. That's the way the Advaita Vedanta would approach this. And so they'd end up more like this. Jo kucha hai so tu ihai tujse humne dil ko lagaya ek tujhko apan apaya ek tujhko upon a pyre, Jokuchahai so tu ihai, tujse hamne dil ko lagaya. So you start out saying, Namrit Jorna Shanka Name Jati Beda Na Mano Bujya Hamkar Chittanya Ham. You end up saying, Jokuchai. See, I finally known that all this is Brahman, that I too am Brahman. Everything is Brahman. All that exists is Brahman. So that's how you get in classic Vedanta to iti iti through neti neti. And this list of 10 conditions of Guru-Shishya relationship are giving you the blow-by-blow version. See, I must hear the truth, I must contemplate it, and I must strive to realize it. Then I must, in order to strive to realize it, I must engage close scrutiny of reality. I must inquire into the nature of my true self, called Atma Vichara. Then I must detach from the unreal. See, if I learn how to separate the wheat from the chaff, then I shouldn't get attached to the chaff, should I? Should learn how to use the wheat, cook it, feed others, and so forth. So why should I get attached to the chaff? So I know the difference now, so detach, detach, detach. Renounce, renounce, renounce. Chuggy, 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 chuggy. Gita, 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 Gita. You say Gita over and over again, it turns into Tagi, which means renunciation. That's how Sri Ramakrishna said, what's the message of the Bhagavad Gita? Just say Gita, Gita, Gita over and over again. Gita, 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 Gita. Turns into Tagi, renunciation. So he says that's how you find the message of the Gita. It's just renunciation, renunciation, renunciation. So detachment is one of those stages. There are 10 or 12 of those stages of detachment. Mild, middling, and intense, they're called. If you go through a mild level of detachment, it's like, well, I'm going to go find a job. See. I went to Benares to become a monk, but I found a job there. See. So I immediately had some sort of intense renunciation. You see, I wanted to detach from family, friends, world, money. And so I went to Benares to do it, perfect place. But somebody offered me a job there. So, gone, all my original intensity. That's called very, very middling, very mild, very weak detachment. It happens occasionally, just for a moment, and then goes away, in other words. It's a flash in the pan. So, detachment from the unreal has to be a very, very strong intuition, as it were, that arises in your heart and in your mind. And you have to follow through with it. Detach from the unreal. Put it to play. And when you do, then you renounce it completely. There's that word, Tyagi. You renounce mithya, what is false. Mithya, Tyagi. Renunciation of the unreal. Brahman Satya, Jagat Mithya. Brahman is real, the world is unreal. Therefore, renounce it. And the student, Vasishtha, goes on telling Ram, then Brahma Shuddhi happens. You can meditate on Brahman. You've gotten all these things under wraps, you see, all 6 of them. Now I can finally meditate on Brahman properly, because nothing's getting in the way. See, non-renunciation is not there. My attachment to the unreal is not there. My non-knowledge of my true nature is not there. And I have realized in a threefold process how to hear, how to contemplate, and how to realize. See, all those things have been set as a perfect practice or sadhana for myself, and I've arrived at the ability to meditate on Brahman. What does Vedanta call that? Samadhana. Samadhana. It's one of the 6 jewels of Vedanta. The ability to concentrate on Brahman alone, without any other thing getting in my head, you see. Just Brahman. No one else allowed. Get thee behind me. It's perfect. You see, get thee behind me. All those things I've gotten behind me. Now just reality stands in front of me. And pretty soon I am that. 7-8. Brahmajnana, acquiring non-dual wisdom. Brahmajnana, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, to some, the Divine Mother of the Universe will give prema bhakti, ecstatic love. To others, she'll give Brahmajnana, the highest wisdom, non-dual wisdom. But only to the avatar, or to great teachers, will she give both, prema bhakti and Brahmajnana. Again, used to say, Brahmajnana is like that blazing sun in the sky. Then it sets, and prema bhakti is like that moon, full moon that rises afterwards. But every once in a while you'll see blazing sun and pure white moon in the same sky. Brahmajnana and prema bhakti are manifesting in the same soul. That's the Paramahamsa. Beautiful analogies he used to use for these kinds of teachings. So Brahmajnana, a powerful prerequisite to what's coming. Then destroy the subtle mental impressions. Yoga concurs with this too, that even if you can meditate on Brahman, it doesn't mean that you are Brahman yet. Somebody once told Swami Vivekananda, said, well, all of this you're teaching me, that means I am Brahman, right? And Swamiji says, no, you're not Brahman till you realize you're Brahman. This, I would like this said to a lot of people out there I meet who have adopted non-duality, you see, and haven't realized it fully. Oh, we don't have to do practice. My teacher told me we're already the Atman. We're perfect. We don't have to do anything. Practice, that's for slouches. See, that's for underlings. No, you're not Brahman until you realize you're Brahman. You have to have that non-dual samadhi. So you have to be able to acquire non-dual wisdom and so forth. All of these requisites have to be in place. You can't pretend it. That can take lifetimes, or one very intense lifetime, or you really dig deep. So vinasha samskara means you destroy mental impressions that are buried very, very, very deep. People think, oh, you know, I really did my sadhana last week. I gave up coffee. I'm not taking sugar anymore. I'm exercising every day. I'm jogging. So I must be enlightened now. See? All of my impressions, you see, are gone. See, but probably the desire for sugar and the desire for laziness and all those things are still back there in your mind. Even the gross impressions might not even be completely gone yet. But what about the subtle impressions that came from past lifetimes? Like the camel eating thorny bushes, you see. Goes to his next camel body. Still has a desire for thorny bushes. He never got rid of that in his previous lifetime. How many of those kinds of impressions are we holding as we go through life? And maybe some of them unbeknownst to us. We don't really come upon them until we do some sort of intense detachment, intense renunciation. You see. Do some sort of practice like this. Advaita Vedanta Sadhana, it's called. You think Advaita Vedanta doesn't have a practice? We've been showing you that ever since the first chart 3 Sundays ago. Non-touch yoga has to do with getting rid of fear. Remember all the requisites of non-touch yoga in that first chart? There is a practice to do here. It's not your usual practice, like Hatha yoga or pranayama or things like that. It's a mind yoga. It's mano yoga. It's buddhi yoga. It's how Holy Mother used to say, my devotees, my children are doing mano yoga. They're doing buddhi yoga. That is, they're purifying their minds and they're refining their intellects. And that is a very high yoga. They don't have to do asana and pranayama. They've already done that in a previous lifetime, most likely. And now they are understanding this, you see. This is what they need to understand. This is the stuff of self-realization. Working with the mind, the intellect, and diminishing that rascally little ego so it gets out of the way, see. They cannot see Sanat right now, you see. But if I can diminish that ego, then I see him perfectly. That's the same with God. You cannot see God as long as that ego is inflated. But as soon as you deflate that ego, all of a sudden all that light behind it is seen by you. So that's the kind of practice you engage in Advaita Vedanta sadhana. These are subtle mechanisms back in there, and they have subtle impressions in them. You think maybe the mind itself only holds impressions? You don't think that the intellect holds impressions? Or the ego holds impressions? Probably many more than the mind. The mind is just full of them, can't deal with them all. But the intellect and the ego, they can deal with them. The ego through shock, shock, shock. And the intellect through acquiring of non-dual wisdom. So we put our minds to that. Sri Ram, the teenage avatar of the age, unbeknownst to everyone but 12 great souls living on the planet, taking teachings from the hoary old sage, Lord Vashishta. See? It's called Yoga Vashishta. We have a version of it here in SRV that we've composed for all of you. A revisitation of that great scripture to see how Lord Vashishta led Sri Ram into the territory of the Advaita Vedanta, into the province of the enlightened. As Gaudapada would say. Now finally, we get to Sthiti Samadhi. I don't really care what samadhi it is, I'm just steady in it. In fact, probably like Sri Ramakrishna, if I have so many samadhis, I don't even know what to name them. People came to him and said, oh, that samadhi you had, that's Jata Samadhi, and that samadhi you had is Unmana Samadhi. And then he'd tell them about other samadhis he'd have, and the priest would say, we've never heard of that. And they'd run to their books and flip through them, and they couldn't find those samadhis that Sri Ramakrishna had, you see. But this word, Sthiti Samadhi, means just stay steadily in samadhi. Sthiti means steady. Like this, like Shiva in yoga. See? Never wander out of the territory of samadhi. If you go to the surface samadhi called Laukika Gyan, that's okay. You're in the realm of objects. Just know that those objects have come from you and you'll be fine. And pretty soon that samadhi will deepen and you'll go back to Shuddha Laukika Gyan. You'll start having the realization of what objects really consist of, you see, where they really come from. And then pretty soon you'll go to an objectless samadhi, either in deep sleep or in meditation or both. It'll happen, you see. Just remain in samadhi. Assume the position. The police aren't the only ones that can use that phrase. The Advaitic police can use it too. Assume the position. That's the Advaitic position. Aham nirvikalpa. I am nirvikalpa. I am the highest samadhi. That is my true nature. Gaudapada says so. My dad can beat up your dad. See? Gaudapada, the father of all philosophy and non-dual philosophy, has said so, has pronounced it. Is there some reason I shouldn't believe it as his child? Does the child doubt his father? Or his mother? So these are the great declarations. So here you see a sort of quick rendering, you see, of the 10 conditions of the Guru, Shishya, disciple. In Advaita Vedanta, there's nothing here that's very dualistic, is there? There's hardly even anything here that's qualified dualistic. It's all non-touch. It's not like you can get in your mind and try and touch these things. Even when you're hearing the truth, it's subtle. It's happening back inside of you. It's all happening in your mind, right? Didn't he say? If there is any transformation at all, it's there, in the mind. That much I'll give you. That much I'll allow you. But you will find that everything is transformationalist. In the final reading, you will find that everything is originless. That means eternal, unchanging. Everything. Not just the soul, not just Brahman, not just nature, even Maya is eternal. There's only one time when Maya will ever go away, and that's when you have Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Maya will finally retreat. In the meantime, just try and get it behind you. Now, in the remaining time, I wanted to also show you this chart on the inherent characteristics of your true self. Atman, it's called. Vivekananda comes at us again. He says, "It is not in the brain, but in the heart that the Atman, possessed of knowledge, power, and activity, has its seat. The chief nerve center near the heart, called the sympathetic ganglia, is where the Atman has its citadel." I'd call it the sympathetic Ganges. That nerve ending there is the three rivers joining there in the heart. So the Atman has its citadel there in the heart. You meditate on the heart. Sri Krishna says that in the Gita. Your guru will tell you that. If you go to your guru and say, "I'd like to meditate in the third eye, sir," if he's a true guru, he'll say, "No, you meditate in the heart." That's where we all meditated. That's where we all got our start in spiritual life. Third eye, throat, those will open up in due time. And when they do, this is still your foundation. To have these experiences, you have to have a foundation here in the heart. So you don't get disoriented, because these higher chakras are disorienting. That's their poison, especially the third eye. There's a nectar there, and there's a poison. The nectar is transcendentalism, the poison is disorientation. And it happens to great souls, that they can get disoriented in such a non-dual place. They have to become acclimatized by degrees, like even the mules going up to the top of Mauna Loa here on the Big Island at 14,000 feet have to stop every 1,000 feet, you see, to get acclimatized. So like that, Advaita Vedanta has these air of heights, stupendous heights, you see, and everyone's going to have to stop and get acclimatized bit by bit to them as you return to your true nature. You return to the source. As you do, you should know what the Atman consists of. It's Ajaha, unborn. There is that very quote that I just sang. Namrichor na shanka, nami jati beda, pita naiva, me naiva, mata majan maham. Chidananda Rupaham Shivoham Shivoham Om. That's what he's saying there. Death nor fear I have none, nor any distinction of caste, neither father nor mother, not even a birth have I. Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. I am pure knowledge and pure bliss. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. 5th verse of the Nirvana Shatkam by Shankara. So, what's he saying there? He's telling you the soul is unborn. Ajaha, unborn. No father, no mother, no birth, no death. Could it be any simpler? Could it be any more profound to meditate on? Could there be any refuge for fear in such a meditation? You're also stanuhu, which is right out of that word steady. See, sthiti samadhi, stanuhu, same Sanskrit word, even, steady, immovable, untouched, if you will. So there you have the quote from Ashtavakra. Ashtavakra means bent in 8 places. Because he was born that way because his father cursed him in the womb. He was born bent in 8 places. And his father removed the curse later and he straightened up. Every good kid should straighten up. He says, adoration to myself, impervious to decay, who outlasts even the dissolution of the universe, from Brahman down to a blade of grass. You see how they put it? These great souls? There's a book on the shelf there called Ashtavakra Samhita. It was one of the only books Ramakrishna would allow near him. He would have Vivekananda take it and read from it every once in a while. Swamiji, at that young age, didn't like it. Later on he said, it's my especial thing. Everything there, that non-dual philosophy, you see, my especial thing. So Ashtavakra Samhita, that's his Samhita, this rishi named Ashtavakra. Look what he says. He adores his self, which is unborn, which is stable, and which is impervious to decay, and which outlasts even the dissolution of the universe. Can he be any clearer? Is there anything vague about that? Your self is stanuhu. Yourself is nityaha, absolute. Swami Vivekananda again. If you have known Atman as the one existence, and that nothing else exists, for whom, for what desire do you trouble yourself? Everyone's busy writing. Are you hearing this? If you have known Atman is the one existence, and that nothing else exists, for whom, for what desire are you troubling yourself? This is an Advaita Vedanta koan. See, this needs to be unwrapped. But its practicality in its sense is immediate, isn't it? Puts everything into perspective right away. Have I been brooding lately? Have I had any fear? Have I been troubling myself? Have I been deviating from the course? Why? For whom? When I know that the Atman is the one unborn, stable, and absolute reality. What else is it? Puranaha, ancient, or timeless, if you will. Svetashvatara says in his Upanishad, to that timeless Brahman be thou devoted, through the primal and ancient cause, Atman, the eternal soul. Ancient cause. See, that's the timeless cause. Your soul is also achala, immovable. The self is unmoving, yet it is faster than mind. Having preceded the mind, it transcends the senses. It outstrips all that runs. In another Upanishad, it says, Atman is higher than the higher, lower than the lowest, faster than the fastest, slower than the slowest. It outstrips all that runs. Why? Give me one word, Sanskrit or English. It's
all-pervasive.
All-pervasive. It's all-pervasive. If you're all-pervasive, you don't need to go anywhere. You're there already. Just meditate on that one word, all-pervasive. I am everywhere. I am everything. I am in everything. I don't need to move. I'm immovable. And you'll get the idea about achala. Sanatana. What's that word mean? Eternal, yes, eternal. They call these teachings from India the Sanatana Dharma, is one of their titles. The eternal religion. The eternal Dharma of the ancient rishis of India. That's how much it has been revered through the ages. Not just by people from India, but by people around the world. Buddha came from India. You find that everyone is turning back to India with these folded hands, with their palms together. Katha Upanishad says, the wise do not grieve, having known the bodiless, all-pervading Supreme Atman, who dwells in impermanent bodies. The eternal Atman that dwells in impermanent bodies. Doesn't it sound like associating and playing? Associating and playing in bodies, you see. Never identifying with them, but just associating with them and withdrawing, detaching, so forth. So that's Katha Upanishad's way of saying it. Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. Same Upanishad. Nityo Nityanam. It's the eternal among non-eternal things. So, same thing. It's avikaryaha, inactive. Sri Krishna says, that one verily sees who sees that all actions are done by nature and that Atman is actionless. Just little sentences out of different scriptures and different sayings of these great seers in India. Just little sentences. Take one and meditate on it. It's your mantra for the week, you see. And connect it to its source. Why am I actionless? Why am I inactive? Why am I so darn stable? Why am I so pure? Why am I so steady all the time? Why is that my true nature? See? Well, that's because Krishna says that all actions are done by nature, not by my soul. All actions, all phenomena, all changes take place in Prakriti, not in the Purusha. Purusha always looks on. It's got some mild interest there. Oh, what's going to happen now in the playhouse of Maya? You see. Sri Ramakrishna used to love to be taken to the Star Theatre in Calcutta, you see, where they'd put on these great religious plays, some by Girish Ghosh and so forth. So they'd get him a seat, you know. He used to say, everyone's talking all the time. It's just like the world. Talkie, talkie, talkie. But as soon as the curtain goes up, everyone gets silent. It's like samadhi. So he'd be sitting back there like a child, you know, in this little booth they got for him, you know. It went silent, it went silent. But then, 5-10 minutes later, he'd be weeping in samadhi, in bhava samadhi, because some character on stage was going through some sort of horrible religious problem, you see. Then he'd be chilled, you know, his skin would be like chicken skin brada, you say in Hawaii, you see. Be like goose pimples, you see. Because he would have see something on the stage that had to do with somebody attaining some spiritual height, you see. So it was just like this beautiful theater, playhouse of Mahamaya, you see. So into it, you see. And then take him away, he's not. He's forgotten. But he'd look back on it and say, oh, did you see? Did you see how Chaitanya renounced the world and went to an Advaita teacher? How beautiful that was. See? How he went out in the street and shouted the mantra to everyone when his teacher told him not to tell it to anyone. Wasn't that beautiful? So, that playhouse of Mahamaya, Shashvataha, you are immutable. That is, your soul, Atman, the true you, is immutable. The quote here is from Shankara. The I and everything else is based in transformation. Only the Atman is immutable. Want of change is Atman. Nice. Want of change is Atman. Where there is no change, guess where you are? You're in the Atman. See? So look for that place where no change happens. Shashvataha. That sounds like a sneeze. You're avyaktaha, unmanifested. Well, nature, we've learned today, has an unmanifested side. So does the soul. Gaudapada says, name, form, and function differ, but space, which holds them, remains unchanged. Similarly, Atman is unaffected by its Maya projections, called individual souls. Who or what could possibly produce this Atman? Shall we go back over it all again? Who or what could actually produce the Atman? Can you create a soul? Does the ego even get created? Or is it just inflate and deflate again and again? You see? It's like a balloon you blew up. You see? It was already created. It's already in existence, that is. It just gets animated, you see, and then deanimated, and animated again. Watch it go on in front of your very eyes. So you're inexhaustible. Everything is inexhaustible. Good way to fire yourself up with strength. You're Avinashi. If you're watching Avinashi, aloha. He might be watching from Pennsylvania, you see. He's destruction, without destruction, you see. So Avinashi means indestructible. That which, when name, space, time, substance, and causation are destroyed, dies not, that is the indestructible. You'll find that in the Svetashvatara Upanishad, which was the Upanishad we just quoted from in the entry before. So here, the Sarva Upanishad says it. That is, name, space, time, substance, and causation, when those go away, what is left? There you'll find that Atman, because it does not get destroyed like everything else. Destroyed here means sort of tongue-in-cheek, you see. It does not get put in abeyance and then come back again, you see. Atman is always there. It's not like other things. It's not a thing at all. Sarvagataha. I know a Swami named them Sarvagatananda. See, all-pervading he is. Atman alone is. It is the all-full and blissful consciousness pervading everything. It is the immaculate jnana itself, the all-pervading akasha. The three worlds arise in it, yet they do not affect its true state. So there's your word for all-pervasiveness, sarvagataha. Finally, it's achintyaha, incomprehensible. And don't let that stop you from trying to comprehend it, though. The beautiful song Ramprasad sings, he says, "O Mother Kali, you are incomprehensible. No one can fathom you. Yet, we should always try to fathom you, because trying to fathom you purifies our mind. And when our mind is pure, then we can see you." So you'll never see her with an impure mind. She's incomprehensible with the impure mind, but as soon as you purify that mind through trying to comprehend her, then she'll appear to you, you see. Like brilliant light in a dark cave. The yogis sing that song, you see. O Mother's scintillating light radiates. Therefore the yogis meditate upon her in a dark mountain cave. They don't want to see her in the sunshine. When they see her light, they want it to make the greatest impact on them, you see. So they go to a dark mountain cave and meditate. Sensory deprivation, you see. Then when she shines, wow, you see. All the more intense, right? Katha Upanishad says, Atman hidden in all beings reveals itself not to all, but only to the seers via their honed and subtle intellect. Very important to get a hold of that intellect then. It shines like sun rays. See. Sri Ramakrishna ends it all by saying this about the Atman. That which is Atman is unattached. Maya is in it. It is not in Maya. One cannot see Atman. It is like sugar mixed with water. It disappears. Just so, when Atman gets mixed with the world, beings fail to notice it. Beautiful. That's how subtle your Atman is. Gets mixed with the world, then they forget about it. We already had that teaching. See. But that's the sweetness in everything, isn't it? So I thank you for listening. I thank you for viewing these 3 or 4 charts that we actually observed today and studied. They were a mouthful for me and for you. Probably a mouthful for me and a mindful for you. So take them back, and they're now live streamed. They're also now recorded in the archives. You may look back on this and extract as much of the non-dual wisdom out of it as you possibly can. It'll be for your highest and best good, and the highest and best good of all others. Now let's end here with a chant. Om Tat Nayo, Om Tat Nayo Ravrinni Mahe, Gatung Yagyaya Gatung Ye Nupataye, Daivi Swastarastu Naha, Swastir Manusebhyaha, Urdhvam jigatu bhesajam sangno astu dvipade sangchatushpate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we offer all into the Great Self. May we always delight in this offering. May we always revere the Lord and Mother of all sacrifices. May divine blessings be upon us. May peace be unto the entire human race. May healing, well-being, and prosperity then also abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.